everybody. I'm Emily. I'm so excited to be moderating this conversation because it's a really rock star group of people with very different perspectives. So we're going to get through as much as we can in the next 30 minutes and then leave some time for you guys to ask questions. I'm just going to introduce everybody quickly. This is Jennifer Bremer, the Executive Director of the Texas Land and Mineral Owners Association. Next to her, we have Felo Martinez. He's a fourth generation Texan rancher. Then we have Cindy Taff, the CEO of Sage Geosystems. And last, we have Barry Smitherman, who's chair of the Texas Geothermal Energy Alliance. So I just wanted to start with Cindy because she, has really got a personal story about building a business in this space. And the theme of our panel is successes and then looking forward to progress. So Cindy, if you could just very quickly walk us through what got you into geothermal and if you could get us up to the point where you got connected with Felo so everybody knows a little bit about that piece of the story.
Absolutely. So my background is oil and gas. So I left Shell at the end of 2020 after about 35 years and was contacted by my partners, Levering and Lance Cook, and they said, you need to get into geothermal and have some fun. And so I came over to Sage with Lev and Lance. We got into the field very quickly because we wanted to, demonstrate our technologies in the field. It's always great to model in the office, but we wanted to get to the field very quickly. So we happened to start looking at wells around Texas and found a well that actually Shell drilled in 2008. It was an exploration gas well. It was drilled to 19,000 feet, 235 degrees C bottom hole temperature. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it was not cased that deep. It was only cased to 11,500 feet with big casing, but it happened to be on Felo's ranch. So we reached out to Felo and his wife, Stephanie, in early 2021 and started talking about, we wanted to re-enter the well. We had to dig up the casing because it was all plug and abandon. You couldn't see anything. And we wanted to do some testing. And so, that's when I met Felo and Stephanie. And I think we've had a great relationship ever since.
I want to talk a little bit, though, about that jump from Shell to doing this totally new kind of crazy thing. Can you talk a little bit more about what that felt like and what that thought process was like for you to transition?
Yeah, it's not as far as you think. So my group, I was over the Unconventional Wells group at Shell globally, and we did all of the cost estimates for geothermal when I was back at Shell. The only thing is we never pulled the trigger. We never did drill any geothermal wells. So I was always intrigued in wanting to get into renewables, and I knew my skill set was such that geothermal had the best potential for me to get into renewables. And so it just seemed like a natural segue from my oil and gas background into renewables. And then, the icing on the cake is not only are we doing geothermal baseload, but we got into the field, like I said, pretty quickly, and we recognized that we have an energy storage solution as well, which is very important because, wind and solar have done such a great job at, cleaning up the grid, but they're really in need of storage so that we can make sure electricity is at the right time of the day. So yeah, happy to be here, having more fun than I ever had in my career. So
we're not so scary after all. Okay, so Felo, you get like this phone call out of the blue from someone who says they want to put geothermal on your land. Tell us about what that was like and what you thought.
Years ago, we didn't know much about it at all. We soon started to educate ourselves about geothermal and all the different advantages that, there's a lot of oil and gas production on our land. We're fourth generation, so my ancestors were very interested in buying land. And this is in the 20s. In 27, our ranch will be where we live, where Steffi and I live, will be 100 years old. So, we've been there quite a while. Going back to my ancestors, they were interested in buying land. They didn't have much. There wasn't any production at that time, so they sold royalties to buy land. And that's what that's how we amassed our ranch. That's how we got our land. And so anyway, long story short, we've made a living in the cattle business. What goes on our ranch, on our land, on the surface, subsurface is very important to us. We're kind of unique in a way that a lot of families that have ranches or in the cattle business don't actually live on the ranch, but of course we do. And so we depend on it for everything. We have to take care of it. I mean, we're the only ones that we're stewards of the land, so it's up to us to take care of our land. The surface, subsurface, our water, you know, we use it for watering our cattle. Personally, we bathe in it, wash our clothes, we cook with it. So it's very important. And we take our situation it's very personal, and it's very important to us. And so when Cindy and Sage and her group came and started talking about, you know, clean energy, geothermal, minimal amount of human imprint, yeah, we were like all ears, you know. And we're real impressed with them when they came in and they made the pad, our roads, all, you know, they've done a very good job. And as a landowner, yeah, it's good to see that, and we're very appreciative. Thank you. But as far as the clean energy is concerned, yeah, we want to do what we can to help this industry as a landowner, because what I've seen so far has been very positive. And like I said, we are unique. We live there. You know, every day, every morning, go up, make the rounds. We pass by the pad. We pass by when you all were doing, you know, drilling and whatnot. But it was a good experience for us, and that's why we want to continue to help. That's why I'm here. Not that I'm an expert in anything, but at least I'm here. And if I can help, that's what I want to do.
I'd say you're an expert in the experience of working with a geothermal company.
We're very fortunate.
And so your land, so everybody knows, is in South Texas, outside of McAllen, right?
I'm sorry?
Your land is in South Texas?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And can you see the work site from your house, or how close are you to it?
You can't really see it, but it's not that far. I guess as the crow flies, we're probably about a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it is. I get on horseback and get there like in, I don't know, 20 minutes.
But in terms of the disruption to your day-to-day life,
No, it really, you know, it has it. It really has it. And they've been really good about when people come in, letting us know beforehand when they're doing certain types of jobs that there's going to be a lot of traffic. They let us know, and they let us know ahead of time, which as a cattleman helps me out, because if they have to cross several pastures to get to the pad, which they do, I can actually organize my grazing according to how much traffic's going to be in those certain pastures. You don't get that from other companies. They come and they lease your land, and I'm sorry, but they think it's theirs. It's not.
well, I was lucky enough to get out there to.
I'm sorry?
I was lucky enough to be out there to
You
do
were.
some reporting,
You were.
and I remember the cattle are kind of up right near the work site. And you know, I live in Houston. I don't see cattle that much. We like ran to the windows to take all these pictures, but it really was this amazing thing to see, you know, this beautiful ranch land and the cattle, and then this work property. I mean, it all kind of blended together in this interesting
Yeah, our
way.
cattle were right there. I mean, Shannon, which was her main guy there, yeah, Shannon and our cows, they were like buddies. They come visit Shannon every day.
Actually, Stephanie and Felo used to feed Shannon all the time. They were spoiling him. And anyway, but no, they were taking care of him.
Yeah.
Always checking in on him and making sure everything was okay, which we appreciated.
Okay, so Jennifer, you guys do some advocacy work around geothermal now, but this is a new-ish field for you guys. So can you tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do and what your involvement has been so far?
Sure. So we are an advocacy organization. We focus on Texas alone, but our members are both surface, subsurface owners. Some own both, some own one or the other. And so our history has primarily been in the oil and gas industry, but as y'all heard a lot, the transition from oil and gas to geothermal is not that different. And so I got involved this year because the Geothermal Energy Association came to me with a bill that they were seeking to pass to get some certainty for their companies and leasing. And so that was kind of our jump into the industry, and it was drinking from a fire hose, but we got it done.
And that bill, I think, was Senate Bill 785.
Correct.
Which gave the landowner, it clarified that the landowner owns the geothermal energy in Texas. But that was just one of a handful of bills which were passed this session. And Barry, you were involved in a number of those too. So I don't know if there's any that really stick out in your mind that you want to talk with people about that were really a big win in your perspective.
Well, I think they were all a big win. Not only did we pass our legislative agenda, but we educated the legislature about the potential for geothermal energy. And this was really a new concept for Texas. You know, we've had oil and gas for over 100 years. We've had wind now for 20 years, and most members are familiar with those. They either have projects or employees in their district. If they're out west, they see wind turbines, and the story of the wind is very similar to the story that Felo was talking about now. And if you'll remember, 20 years ago, wind was a rounding error. We had no wind on the Texas grid, though we had great wind resources. And we embarked upon this initiative to build enough transmission lines when I was chairman of the PUC to move the wind in to the I-35 corridor and east. And the response we got from landowners was similar to what you've heard Felo say. Thank you for giving me another revenue stream. My family has owned this ranch for 100 years, but we're struggling because we can't make enough money on cattle and hunting, and all we have is the surface. So this is another opportunity for us. But Winter Storm Uri really highlighted for all of us the challenges of having a grid that is becoming more and more dependent on intermittent resources. So this is when I became involved after a time at the Railroad Commission and the PUC. I saw the benefits of the dispatchability of gas to make electricity and the cleanliness and the economic development of wind and solar, but there were gaps in each of them. So how do we bridge that? And this is where we think geothermal has a role to play. And the reaction we got from the legislature was overwhelmingly positive this session.
I'm curious because I spent a lot of time this session looking at wind and solar and possible legislative changes around that. And the attitudes toward renewable power were getting sort of negative. Whereas, you know, maybe a decade ago when wind was really growing, there was a lot of support in the state for it. This session, there was a lot of concern about how much renewables have grown. So I'm curious from each of you, what, Jennifer and Barry, what the politics around geothermal are. Like, do you see it getting lumped in with wind and solar as a renewable source, or are you doing something to try to make people think about it differently?
Well, we're doing a lot to make people think about it uniquely. It's not just renewable, it's not just dispatchable, it has the qualities of both. And we had to thread the needle at times in talking to members about the fact that yes, it is clean, but it's dispatchable. Yes, it's renewable, but it relies upon the oil and gas industry and their skill set and the drilling technologies and all the things that Cindy has talked about. And as I said earlier this morning, I mean, we passed these bills with over 500 yes votes, and we had one no vote the whole time. And I think that was in committee, and I don't think the member understood what we were talking about. We had to go back and talk to him again. But great bipartisan support, which is wildly unique these days in politics. So,
And just to further that, House Bill 5, which gives tax abatements for geothermal because it is, as Barry said, a dispatchable electricity. it has to be dispatchable. So geothermal is included, whereas other renewables aren't. So I think that bill alone, which means that the local schools can provide a discount for a temporary time for projects to come in. I think it recognizes the strength of geothermal. And we do think, even though energy storage deep in the earth is kind of in a gray area, we think that it will recognize that as well, because that's dispatchable.
So House Bill 5, I don't know how many of you are from Texas, but that was a big deal here because for a long time, wind and solar projects have gotten school tax cuts to build projects here. But the legislature this session with House Bill 5 did not renew that for wind and solar projects. So for geothermal to be included in these tax cuts really does differentiate between wind and solar and geothermal power, I think, in the eyes of the legislature.
As a landowner, I'm sorry, but as a landowner, there's a lot of landowners like our family, that do not have royalties. And we appreciate, Barry, your work, your all's work in this, because this is a way, like Barry was saying, some of these older ranches to be able to sustain their business. It's another form of income, but something that is good for the land. And so we're really appreciative and very excited about it.
Was there anything you wanted to add, Jennifer, about the?
Well, I was just going to add on to what Barry said about differentiating it from oil and gas and wind and solar, because I think a lot of the conversations about securing the grid and those types of things, I think the negativity doesn't come from necessarily it being wind or solar. I think it's the more corporate finance ESG side where people start to worry, and that's where their red flags come up. But in the conversations that we had many times, including with the one no vote that was had, it was never a discussion of how does geothermal fit in with the others. It was like, let's just talk geothermal and how do we get this forward?
And so the grid instability Barry mentioned, we had Winter Storm Uri 2 years ago, which killed hundreds of people in Texas and led to blackouts, rolling blackouts over days in freezing weather. I'm sure you guys remember, but there have been lots of discussions in Texas since then with a whole lot of finger pointing at pretty much every energy source there was. So this term dispatchability refers to a power source that can come on at any time, no matter what. And intermittency is used to describe wind and solar because those need the sun to shine or the wind to blow. But geothermal, Cindy, you're saying can maybe serve a dual purpose, which is, I think, storing energy, but also it could be a way to power the grid, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we, when we got into the field and we were testing our geothermal technologies, we recognized that what we were doing, we could also do energy storage deep in the earth. So you guys think about pumped hydro storage, where you're pumping a lake from the bottom of a mountain to top the mountain. And then when the energy demand peaks, they let the water rush down the mountain and they put it through a Pelton turbine and power electricity. We're doing the same thing, except we're putting the energy deep in the earth in a fracture and storing that in the fracture under a lot of pressure. And then when the energy demand peaks, we let that fracture naturally close on the water. It then jettisons the water to the surface. We also put it through a Pelton turbine. Pelton turbines have been around for hundreds of years, and we power electricity. If we drill deeper and we are actually accessing formations that have a temperature of 150 degrees C or 300 F, then we can take the heat component of that water and the pressure component of that water and generate geothermal energy. And the pressure component is important because a lot of geothermal technologies actually let the pressure component vent to the atmosphere. We're actually using that pressure component to re-inject water into the well, meaning that our net output is going to be 25 to 65% higher. But yeah, energy storage, we can do it, and we don't have to go down to the temperature. So, you can do energy storage just about anywhere. Our geoscientists did a map of the lower 48 And, he thinks that we can do it just about anywhere. We'll stay away from huge fractures, but it can be done just about anywhere.
That's a whole lot of work you guys have done, all of you, in the last years. But I want to just move quickly to talk about looking forward. And if each of you could reflect on what the challenge is that you see ahead and what the hope is that you have. I'd love to hear from each of you on that. We'll start with Jennifer.
Okay. So I think the challenges going forward are going to be building the relationship. I think there are a lot of great relationships built out there, but ultimately landowners and these companies are partners. There are a lot of abandoned wells in Texas, if you're not familiar with that. And so I think the hope is that a lot of these wells that are just out there can be brought back to life to something productive.
And do you hear from people who are interested in this? Like what has your relationship been like with your constituents?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, like I said, we cover the entire state. So there, just as we have some members who have oil and gas opportunities and some don't, we have some that are currently working with Cindy and Sage to develop some more projects down in South Texas. Cindy actually spoke at my conference yesterday, and there was a lot of piqued interest in just learning more about the industry. A lot of it, my job is educating land and mineral owners on the opportunities before them. Again, to help make ends meet and provide a new revenue stream for the next generation.
I guess as a landowner, I would encourage more landowners to look into this and to, work with the companies and accept that this is something that can help us as landowners in the future. The relationships are very, very important. But just the fact that renewable energy, clean energy, and it's something that we need. Also, Jennifer touched on, there's a lot of wells that could be re-entered. And I think they could utilize a lot of this equipment that's already out there. And that would be something I would be very interested in on our land. Because there is a lot of old wells that are out there, they're not necessarily being produced, but they're there because of other production, all that stuff. But anyway, it's very, I would encourage, other landowners to look into this, and I really hope it gets off the ground. I'm just like everybody else. I want it to happen now, and I know it's not, I know it takes time.
Is there a barrier that you see to other landowners getting involved?
I'm sorry?
Is there a barrier or a challenge that you see to other landowners being involved? The challenge is, I think, educating the public, educating the other landowners, and getting the right company in there, that they have a good experience like what we've had. I think that's, as a landowner, is probably the main challenge. Because, as far as it's a minimal human imprint as far as I've seen so far, and what it looks like, the plans, when we've talked to Cindy and her group, it's a win-win situation for us. I'm hoping that's the case, and I know it is. I trust you guys.
Yeah, I would echo Felo. We want to go now. And so I would say the challenge is, we have technologies that we can put into the ground right now. We are innovating in both the well space and the power plant space. And so in order to implement the technologies and be cost effective, which is very important, we just don't want to go do technologies and not deliver at a cost that we can be competitive with wind, solar, natural gas. Then we are building bespoke equipment. So for example, for our energy storage power plant next year, we're building a high pressure Pelton turbine, and it just takes time. So supply chain is a bit challenged still post-COVID, but just building this new equipment, even though it's just being re-engineered and not completely redesigned, it just takes time. And so my frustration and our team's frustration is we want to move quickly, and we're on the same page as Felo.
Yeah, I think like when we've had this summer that was so hot, like the signs of climate change are all around us, right? So I'm sure that plays in somewhat to your sense of urgency and then the business competition as well.
Yeah, and just like I said, wind and solar have done such a great job in greening the grid, but we can make that energy 24/7 if we just add storage. So we can do so much right now. We just need to get that Pelton turbine built and start scaling up.
Okay, Barry, we'll end with you and then we'll take
Yeah,
some
I would
questions.
just add to that, getting a project up and running so that we can take members of the legislature, railroad commissioners and others down so they can see it, touch it, feel it, see how it supplies firm energy to the grid, and also get them to recognize the value of firm, clean energy. We talk a lot about levelized cost of energy and instantaneous cost, and wind and solar are great there, but we haven't valued the firm ability to deliver. And I think some of the programs that the legislature passed, like low interest loans, which is going to be on the ballot this November, will give us an opportunity to avail ourselves of these concepts that are going to reward being dispatchable. So we get a project up, we show we're dispatchable, we're a firm resource for the grid, we're clean, and then I think the future is incredibly bright.
And when you say firm, you mean a reliable
Yeah,
resource?
one that's got an on-off switch.
Mhm.
You know, the challenge we've had is what do we do when it gets dark and still? Wind and solar are great when they're blowing and shining. It's cheap, it is green, it has economic development, but we haven't solved the problem of what we do late in the afternoon, early in the evening when the sun's going down and the wind is lying down. And at that point, we've got to bring something on the grid, and we're not seeing new gas plants being built. There will not be any new coal plants built. In my mind, there will not be any new nuclear plants built. So we have the opportunity to be that firm, clean resource.
Okay, we'll move to questions if anyone's got some.
One thing that I heard from this conversation from mainly Felo is this idea of land stewardship. And when we're comparing renewables, I always thought that geothermal stood out to me as maybe something that's a few leagues ahead of the other renewable resources. I was wondering if you guys could confirm or deny, or at least comment on my theory, if this is the right group.
Are you trying to compare the footprint of the various renewables, or? Yeah, so I can comment and then everybody else can join in. So, and I'm not a wind and solar expert, but solar is between 4 and 7 acres for 1 megawatt. That's just 1 megawatt. I'm not sure, you know, what the megawatt hours are. We could calculate that. What we're doing in geothermal, especially with a multi-well pad drilling, we can put up to 30 or 50 megawatts in about 5 acres. And that includes the power plant equipment plus cooling. And then wind, I'm really not sure, Barry, you might be able to help me because I'm not sure how they count the footprint for wind, but I think wind is up in the 5 acres per megawatt as well, because you have to have a distance between the wind turbines, you know, in order that you don't have interference.
No doubt. I mean, it can be, both can be utilized pretty much so, especially with the amount of acres that Cindy's talking about. It's a lot less than, you know, other industries like the wind turbines. I'm not talking negative about it. I'm just saying it's, as far as the acreage is concerned, they can utilize, say, 10 acres a lot better than some of the other industries. And that's huge for us. The less acreage that they use is more acreage that I can still utilize producing grass for my cattle, for my beef business.
I think,
And then also, cleanup. As clean as this company has run things, we didn't even have fences around their location to keep the cattle out. That's like a first for us, you know. So yeah, I know it's what worries me about other industries is what's going to happen in 30 years. You know, when I'm dead and gone, what's going to happen? You know, my grandchildren are out there. My children are making a living on the land, not that particular one, but they're in the ranching business. Hopefully my great-grandchildren, my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren can. And so, yeah, it's really important for us to be able to be in an industry that can utilize, you know, a minimal amount of acreage and to keep it clean. Makes any sense?
Yes, I'm Robert Estes, retired from Halliburton. I had a question, Felo, for you. You say you don't own the mineral rights, so therefore you're not getting royalties on any oil production on your property. But that's different from the geothermal, where with the new passed bill, you do own those rights for the geothermal energy. So who owns the mineral rights underneath your property, and how do other landowners negotiate that issue?
Well, the passing of the bill that Barry and Jennifer were talking about, that the ownership of those royalties is a landowner. And I do have to go back and say the royalties were sold, not all of them, but the majority of them were. And so we do receive a little bit of royalties, but as the years go on and the families get bigger, it's minimal, you know. So I can't necessarily say that we don't own any minerals. We do, but it's hardly anything. This, I mean, it's kind of in it black and white. I mean, it's passed.
You think so?
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be very positive for the landowners. I don't see any problems as far as that's concerned.
In the future, do you see geothermal as just another category of mineral rights that you have available for sale from your property?
Well, let's be careful. I mean, we don't want to characterize it as a mineral right, because most mineral leases say oil, gas, and other associated minerals. Now, this is a separate, you can think about it almost as a separate estate. So you have the surface estate, which he owns. Theoretically, he could carve the geothermal rights out of that and retain all the remaining part of the surface estate. But we don't want to commingle any of this with oil, gas, and associated minerals. Those belong to the mineral owner.
I'll go ahead and give a plug out to the Geothermal Association. I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but UT put out a really good Future of Geothermal in Texas report, and Ben Seabury did the section on ownership, and it gives a really good explanation of why you don't want to call it minerals. And so we agree with them. We think there's also some case law that solidifies that, but I hope that we don't go down the path of honestly selling off geothermal, but as an association, we believe that that is every property owner's right, that they can do with their property as they choose. So I think that would send us down a really hard path. And for those of you that don't know, minerals are actually the dominant estate in Texas. And so we do not have a Surface Use Act either. And so it is up to each owner. If you have a split estate, you hope that you have a really good mineral owner and operator that will work with you to ensure that you are compensated for any damage that is caused to your surface.
I know there's no reason for us to ever even consider, you know, selling or anything like that. It's just another way to sustain the future generations and hope that they learn how to make it with or without it like we have.
So we have time for one last question here. Thank you all. Just out of curiosity, the Texas severing the geothermal from the mineral rights, is that standard? Like, is that what we see out in California and Nevada, or?
Yeah, again, that's not what we did. What we did was we clarified that the surface owner owns the heat. We didn't sever anything off. There's still a mineral state that's just like it was before. This is consistent with the surface owner owning the groundwater, and also most people would argue the pore space.
So I think what you're saying is it's not like you sat down and thought, do we want geothermal to be in this bucket or that bucket? You looked at the case law and you thought about the issue, and it felt clear to you that it felt right with the surface, right?
Yes, I mean,
Well,
really, we just put in statute what we thought the law was.
Right.
The simple way to look at it is heat is deemed not to be a mineral. And so it's not part of the mineral estate.
Heat is it's a quality, it's a condition of the earth.
Okay, well, actually, we have time for one more question. All right. Well, I'll leave it to you guys for any closing statements that you'd like then.
I just want to say it was an honor to be here, and we look forward to developing our partnerships and our relationships with the industry to do our part to ensure that we keep the grid stable and provide as many opportunities to land owners as we can.
Yes, I'm very honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. This is more than I've talked in probably a year.
How can I follow that?
Yeah, me neither.
No, thanks for letting me be here, and happy to be talking about Texas. Texas is a great place to be experimenting on geothermal and in energy storage. You can get permits very quickly. We're looking at areas all over the country and all over the world, but we love being in Texas doing this.
If you like what you hear, you can join TexGEA, txgea.org. We'd love to have you be a member.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.